very first nightmare. A dream journal story. Chapter 6. Battle for my mind. I looked to the center of the octagon and found to my delight a sword made of onyx, black and glassy like the orb. It sung a song of virtue and belief, and upon the hilt was the symbol for infinity. I dashed from the point where I had landed and drew the sword from its resting place within the stone. The ground shuddered as the 160,000 warriors who bore down upon me braced their footing and looked unsurely at one another. Some even fell to the ground, scrambling to get up. Seeing how outnumbered I was, they laughed, and their fear was gone, once again replaced by a murderous vengeance. I stood alone, vastly outnumbered yet unafraid. I had seen the orb's will when I held it, and somehow I knew these warriors could not kill me. They surrounded me in a circle 20 paces from the center to the first warrior. It was an armored knight who attacked first. His straight-edged, two-handed sword cut through the air before me, as I had already moved back, parrying his blade deep into the stone floor. Then, using the momentum from that hit, I twisted over and sliced through the weak spot at the neck of his armor. The clang of metal on stone rang out as they watched his head come to rest at the foot of a Zulu warrior. The Zulu cocked his head to one side and raised his eyebrows slightly. It seemed he was assessing my ability. From behind, I sensed the whoosh of an arrow sailing through the air. I ducked and rolled left, the arrow landing in the arm of a Celtic warrior. The Zulu flung his spear at the spot I had rolled to, and I bounced the stone tip with the flat of my blade off into an unwary-looking Mayan. I continued like this for an unknown amount of time, willing only to counterattack those who attacked me. In the distance, however, I could see, for each that fell, another would rise in his place, entering through a doorway somewhere within the great octagon. I stepped up my game. I closed my eyes and visualized as many different warriors as I could, each with their own speciality, their own strengths and weaknesses. My body phased and shifted. To the warriors around me, it seemed as if I was blinking in and out of existence. They stood in awe as multiples of myself split from my center and began to take form around me. The barbarian, possessing brutal strength and unstoppable axe and a powerful inner rage, stepped onto the stone with a menacing thud. His messy dark blonde hair hid a chiseled and Neanderthal version of my face. His eyes small and violent. He breathed heavily and looked around for his next opponent. The Avenger had a spiked club and wore light armor with a symbol of the scales upon it. His power lay in his ability to judge right from wrong. He used his ability in conjunction with his faith in his reality and in himself. He was accurate and severe with his final judgment, unable to be lenient and completely unbiased. He gazed coldly at his opposition. The beast wore only a loincloth. His muscled body was immensely powerful and unnaturally fast. Hair grew upon his body in clumps that followed a natural pattern, and his nails were sharp and unbreakable. His senses were honed to a fine point. Night vision, an advanced sense of feeling a spider would be jealous of. He could hear an ant far 200 meters away. He could taste pheromones in the air and smell the fear in a man's heart. The beast used his instincts to guide him. He sniffed at the air and snorted in defiance. The archer had many arrows in his quiver. By nature, he was quick-witted and humorous. He was telekinetic, so his arrows never missed their mark. He could disguise himself very well, often using another man's temptations or anger against them to gain his advantage. The archer gave a mischievous smile and flipped a gold coin in the air. The assassin, lithe and agile, with a small curved blade in each hand and throwing weapons hidden upon his garb. He did not speak, and only his dark black eyes were shown through this outfit of black. He could teleport and use distraction to gut his enemies. He looked left, then right, and suddenly disappeared in a haze of grey smoke. The armoured assaulter, the biggest of the group, stood tall in silver armour, delicately inscribed with runes and charms of ancient magic. His weapons, two great shields that bore spikes upon them to deliver defensive attacks. He took a heavy step forward and raised his shields to the fore and aft. The Blade Master wore two samurai swords at his waist and an arrogant grin upon his scarred face at all times. His arms were crossed and his stance balanced. He gracefully destroyed any who opposed him. He did not move but to breathe, and his eyes saw all movement without seeing. The berserker had two wicked-looking hand axes and a mad devil-may-care look in his eye. He had lost everything, therefore had nothing to lose. He was the most dangerous, as he cared for no one, not even himself. He flipped his axes one after the other as if to juggle them, laughing maniacally as he did so. The black magician, withered and old, had used his power to manipulate and control. His face was always in darkness, yet his eyes glowed blood red. From beyond the grave he had returned to enslave the souls of the weak, that he may once again study the dark arts in the land of the living. He brought his golden scythe before him, and all who gazed upon him trembled in fear and anguish. The White Knight stood in his armour that could not be tarnished by dirt or blood, his face beautiful to behold. His smile was of understanding and compassion. His long sword was straight and had a heart-shaped insignia carved upon it. His shield was large and round, and the outside was mirrored to reflect the enemy's own fears and weaknesses back upon them. The White Knight reached up and closed his visor, showing his enemies none of the beauty he possessed. His visor was pure light and blinding. The Sorcerer of Light, wise and experienced, he is the oldest of them all. Spiritually powerful and in tune with the forces of nature, this being was human once, but is now energy itself. His staff was held in his left hand, and the butt was upon the stone of the octagon. His face was old, but still my own. His hair white and eyes of glacial blue. He raised his staff, and a bolt of blue-white lightning struck out, as the sorcerer said in 1,000 voices, "Begin!" The bolt bounced from his staff and leapt through the crowd of confused warriors. Nearly 1,000 fell in this first attack. The beast and berserker were the first off the mark, leaping ahead into the fray. Clawed faces screamed in agony as the beast delivered fast blows from hand and foot, not to mention the occasional bitten neck. The berserker threw his axes one at a time, and they returned to him after slitting throats and maiming limbs. The assassin who had disappeared earlier was teleporting from door to door, silently garroting new entrants to the octagon, as they thought the battle raged in the centre. The black magician tended the wounded, sucking the life from them and storing the energy in blood orbs to use later in the restoration of his allies' fatigued and damaged bodies. He was unable to be killed by mortal weapons, and used this to his full advantage. Around the Sorcerer of Light the Avenger revolved, protecting him as he summoned powerful magic that erupted from the clear quartz tip of his gnarled wood staff. Fire and ice, wind, water, and earth cast from the sorcerer's hands and amplified by the staff he had made himself. Energy peeled outwards, burning or freezing, drowning, crushing, and throwing enemies high into the air. As the Avenger clubbed the attackers, those who were not killed ran from the battle, seeing the error of their ways and urging to change their wasted lives. The barbarian and the armoured assaulter made wide, defensive circles around my true self, who sat in the centre meditating. The barbarian swung his two-handed axe powerfully and without equal. Even the great Vikings of the north, who were of similar stature, flew through the air with smashed shields from the blows of this behemoth. The armoured assaulter was battling Japanese samurai, their fine blades the strongest in the world, but they were no match for this armour of the ancients. No weak spots showed, no scratch impressed upon it, no piece removable, and always and again the armoured one pushed forward, and those ahead were impaled upon his spike shields and armour, and below their heads were cracked by his immense weight. The archer had taken a triangular position around me, evading the giant battling forms of the barbarian and assaulter. Ever the opportunist, he let arrows fly at foes who sought to stab his allies in the back, and giggled as he did so. The black magician flung the archer a small pouch, which he then tied to an arrow and lit. Red smoke was rising from a large, fat, nasty-looking Persian. The smoke signal was from the assassin, for upon the Persian's back was an explosive device. The beast had wandered far from the centre and was now in the blast zone. Noticing this, the sorcerer whispered to him, "Flee to your left." As the beast tore the throat from an unusually dressed Chinese man, the archer let his arrow fly. The white knight charged towards the beast, who was lost in some sort of frenzied killing spree, and put himself between the beast and the raging Persian. A switch on the back of the white knight's shield was triggered, and the hinges extended, slicing into the ground and locking into place. The white knight braced himself and grabbed the beast by the scruff of the neck, pulling him behind the shield. Time slowed as the flaming arrow flew past battling foes, narrowly avoiding swung weapons until finally punching a hole through the Persian's shoulder and out the other side into the soft sack layer of the explosive backpack. The explosion killed thousands, and those outside the kill zone were knocked from their feet. Able to catch their breath, my warriors assessed their injuries, all but the beast, berserker, and the blade master. The blade master had killed 30,000 hardened warriors alone, choosing the widest circle and moving in a dance of death around it. His blades had found no other in their path, and no shield had slowed their movement. No enemy had wounded him, neither a graze nor scratch. His acrobatic, unpredictable style was ever-changing and custom-built to the weaknesses of his opponents. He spun from heel to toe, using every part of his body as his weapon, and his blades as his exclamatory full stop. It took 1,111 minutes for the battle to conclude. The doors no longer exuded enemies of many cultures, and the bodies of the dead decomposed into dust. Some of my warriors rejoiced. The beast, the berserker, the archer, and the barbarian, all caught in the flood of victory. But the thinkers of us knew this was too easy. It was only the beginning. To be continued in Chapter 7, My Greatest Foe. Thanks for watching.